See if you can answer this MCAT high-yield biology question. A patient with congenital defects in the sodium, potassium, ATPase, and enterocytes presents with signs of malnutrition despite normal dietary intake. Which nutrients absorption is most directly impaired? This question is asking about absorption in the small intestine, and there are basically two main categories of absorption that you need to be thinking about. And the first one is for glucose and amino acids. Glucose and amino acids have a high concentration inside the cells that line the small intestine, so they are unable to passively diffuse from the lumen of the small intestine after a meal into those cells. So what happens is that the cells of the small intestine use the sodium-potassium pumps to pump sodium out of the cells into the lumen of the small intestine. And then those sodium ions can passively diffuse back into those cells, but they diffuse through a co-transporter and they take a molecule of glucose with them. And the exact same thing happens to absorb amino acids into those cells. That whole process is super important, and it's called secondary active transport. Once they're inside the small intestine cells, the glucose and the amino acids can diffuse into the bloodstream. The other category of absorption is lipids and nonpolar molecules. Free fatty acids and other lipid molecules that have been broken down via chemical digestion will form micelles. Once formed, the micelle will enter the small intestine cells. And then once they're in there, the free fatty acids and other lipid molecules will get processed, and we form a lot of cholesterol esters and triglycerides. Those cholesterol esters and triglycerides and other lipid molecules combine with proteins to make a large molecule called a chylomicron. The chylomicron then moves into a lymphatic vessel called a lacteal, and then it's going to move through the lymph system until it eventually gets dumped into the bloodstream. So given that amino acids and glucose are the ones that rely on the sodium-potassium transporter, then we would not be absorbing glucose correctly.